Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program with myself, Martin Blackham, with my wife, Nathalie Blackham. Great to have you with us from our studios in Jerusalem, bringing you news and features from Israel, bringing you an understanding about the seasons that we're living in, bringing you an understanding about what's really happening in the land. Now, we're just about to do a number of things in Israel. As we've come into the studio today, we're just on the very edge of Passover. We've just had a general election, and so there's a lot of things happening in the land. And we're also coming up to Independence Day and Holocaust Memorial Day and a number of other things. But the first thing we want to talk to you about is some of the very serious things that are happening regarding the Israel's extreme vaccination program, and also the green pass or green passport, some people are calling it, because I know that there are a lot of people who are watching are very concerned. So listen to this. Israel is to mark its Independence Day under green pass or the green passport regulations. According to Israel's ministry, only vaccinated people will be allowed to attend the ceremonies. Unheard of before, that they are restricting members of Israel's population from attending these very important ceremonies. Remember, Israel's Independence Day is the day when we celebrate that Israel is again the Jewish people are again in the land, that Israel is again a nation, and it's a very important day. Also, Holocaust Memorial Day is also a very important day in the calendar. In accordance with what the government have decided last week, outdoor venues with fewer than 10,000 seats can host up to 75% of maximum permitted capacity, up to 3,000 people. Those with more than 10,000 seats, that's venues, will be able to accommodate guests up to 30% of capacity, up to 5,000 people. Indoor venues with fewer than 5,000 seats will be open up to 75% of their capacity, up to 1,000 people, and those with more than 5,000 seats up to 30%, which is very odd, Natalie, bearing in mind that these people are meant to be vaccinated and that they can't fill the stadium. But anyway, very strange. It says,
and they still have to have also a mask.
And they still have to have a mask. Why can't they have normal capacity? Why can't they not have masks if this vaccine, so-called vaccine, works? Green passes or the green passport is...
Wait, could we just try to say that it's not a vaccine, because it's important. Right. It's like a genetic injectable. Mm-hmm. So we need really to say that, because when you say vaccines, it's not the vaccine like it was working
just
before.
For the people to...
Yeah.
It's just so,
I think it's
just so that some people don't know about... Listen, there's a whole issue with this so-called vaccine. So many of our lovely viewers don't know all the story, Nat. So just to be able to communicate with them, it's important that we call it for that. But bear in mind, it isn't. But we're going to call it that, just so you know what we're talking about. I can say an injectable, but then it's a bit confusing. Anyway, the green passport system will be required for all the events of the Holocaust Memorial Day and Independence Day and the Soldiers Memorial Day, which, you know, these are huge events in Israel, and never ever before in the history of this country have Israeli citizens been denied access to such important events. It's unbelievable what's happening here, Natalie.
It means that there is second citizens.
Right. Now, the other thing is we've had an election, a very important election, and we've had a new party. We've talked about them before on the last program, called the Rapha Party, the Healing Party, and the candidate, one of the main candidates, Ilana Rachel Daniel, she's a leading spokesperson for this party, has issued an important statement, and this is what Ilana said. And this is her declaration before the election. But she says, I maintain that the right to self-determination and bodily autonomy are not privileges offered by government, but are inalienable, listen to this, rights inherent to every individual with whom we share the planet. Her statement reads, I join forces with my co-founders of the Rapha Party for the same reasons that you have searched and arrived at this initiative, that you've been interested to hear what she has to say. This movement is one that finally raises the bar. It leaves behind the arguments of right, left and pro, anti, even religious, and asks what are the most basic common denominators that we share. Like many of you, I've witnessed the deliberate destruction of the values that we live by and the systems in place to uphold them in the name of, quotation marks, public health. I, like you, have sat up nights grappling with the inconsistencies and the explanations of our government, that's the Israeli government, has offered for their policies. In the near 5 cumulative months we have sat in lockdown, I, like you, have seen a brightness in our children dim. I've searched beyond the superficial sound bites we have been handed for science and medicine with transparency and integrity. Very important that you note that. Transparency and integrity, because we're not getting any information at all about 2 issues. One is the coronavirus. It's difficult. There is information about coronavirus, but in Israel, but it's not so patchy. Easy to get.
It's patchy. It's not what they want them. It's how the government and the media wants to show the thing to us, and it's not always the truth. No, it's not the full truth, as we can say, because they give some of the truth, but it's not all the truth. And we hear many testimonies now of people who have really trouble when they had the first shot, then the second shot.
Yeah, this is what I was going to say, that there isn't transparency and integrity in what's happening as a result of the vaccination program. It's not just that the population are being vaccinated, because as a population, Israel has been vaccinated for years. There've been the flu jab, measles, children's vaccinations. So this isn't new that there's a vaccination program. What is new is that everybody has to have it. That's new. That's never happened before. And what's concerning is there's two very important concerning facts about what's happening in Israel. Number one is that this is an experimental, as Nathalie was saying, it's not really even a vaccine injectable. It's experimental. We don't really know all the possibilities that's going to happen because they've never had a chance to. Even Pfizer have said that they're having to wait, and maybe I can talk a bit about that till 2022 for the results to come out.
Yes, and you know what tests. I heard also from the CEO of Pfizer, Monsieur Bourla, Monsieur Bourla, he was saying that here in Israel they even want to vaccine till the children who are 5 years old and over. And I've never heard anybody here saying that in this country, but he's saying that Israel is going to do that.
Now, she goes on to say, after a full year, billions upon billions of dollars, the most brilliant scientific minds at the task, I ask, how can deadly lockdowns and a risky experimental, we've talked about this, novel new technology be our only options? There's not a range, there's like one option. The cure has become far worse than the disease. The old saying, the cure, it can kill. I maintain that the right to self, this is the candidate for the Rofi party, she says, I maintain that the right to self-determination and bodily autonomy are not privileges offered by the government. They are inalienable rights inherent to every individual whom we share this planet. Informed consent is a basic component of a healthy and functioning society. The freedoms of speech, choice, and ability to earn an honest wage and raise a family according to these rights are upon which the government may not, it's not that they can or should, may not intrude. Our government will not be returning us our freedoms. On the contrary, they plan to take action to further eradicate them. And she goes on to say, I'm not a politician, I'm part of this movement because this country is more than my home and our fellow citizens are more than neighbours. This is our land and it is our refuge. Remember, the land of Israel is the place where the Jewish people only have the only place of refuge in the world they could go to, and indeed even today it's the only place of safe refuge. The nations are watching now as they've always done. I think she may be wrong on that. I think the white nations are even more watching because of this experimental vaccine, a bleak injectable, because of this experimental situation, a lot of nations are looking at Israel to see what's going to happen. I wish to restore our ability to shine light to them. So she's concerned about this vaccine, Nathalie, concerned about this injectable, concerned about politics, concerned about the government forcing things. And we're going to go
now, wait. I want to say something. Today I was looking at some news, and I heard that in Hong Kong they are stopping the vaccine, Pfizer, and also in Australia, because they have trouble with that. So again, we have this information, but there is nothing in the media here in Israel speaking about these things.
The media's gone, so you know, if you want to find any information like we're talking about, you cannot find it. It's very difficult to find it on mainstream
and
media.
There is some information that was given about the protocol was done between the government of Israel and Pfizer. But there is a lot of things like marked, so you can look at the dates. There is a lot of information when they don't want to give specific things, is marked, and so we don't have all the information. We have some of it, but we don't have all of it.
Now, one of the things that you need to know about that's happened here in Israel is that hundreds of Israelis turned out for a worldwide freedom rally held in Jerusalem this Saturday night, the 20th of March, as part of protests being held all over the world regarding government overreach with regards to COVID-19. Demonstrators were protesting in particular with regards to breach of civil liberties, with the lockdowns, border closures, compulsory vaccination program, compulsory green scheme passes, and the censorship of the media. The Israeli demonstrators were taking a stand for 5 freedoms, 5 very important freedoms, which are 1, freedom of speech, 2, freedom of movement, 3, freedom of choice, 4, freedom of assembly, and 5, freedom of health. Speakers included Dr. Morin Cronenberg, Gal Shalev, Advocate Yoram Morim, Tamir Turgel speaking remotely, Dr. Pinky Feinstein, Rabbi Hannah Wiseman. The Worldwide Freedom Rally demonstrations took place in over 100 cities across the globe. And this is very important for you to know, that in Israel there are demonstrations against what's happening.
But there was nothing about it in the media, in the main media. There was not one, also because it's very close to the election, there was not one politician over there who was saying, yes, we agree with you and we're standing with you. Nothing.
That's because they're afraid to stand against,
and it's a
against
worldwide
the machine, really.
It's a worldwide rally. It wasn't just happening in Israel.
Happening all over the world.
So it was very important, but here...
Now,
nothing.
The other thing that's happened, I mean, there's many things happening, but the first, let's just go through some of the things, because there's things happening, a lot of things happening at the same time. Firstly, the IDF is the National Protection Force for the for the state of Israel. It's the Israeli army. It protects the borders, and it's you know, when people leave school here, this is the thing they don't talk about university. They talk about which regiment or which brigade they're going into. It's that important, because you're called up to do national service, but you don't have to go into the army. You can go into other things, but the army is the normal thing. So most people will go into the IDF. Well, what's been happening? Israeli soldiers removed from military operations because they refused the vaccine. A soldier serving in the Israeli Navy in the army section said that he and other soldiers in his unit were forced to move to another unit because they refused to be vaccinated against coronavirus. Israel's N12 News reported Tuesday. The soldier further claimed that his unit said his refusal to be vaccinated is an issue of operational readiness. The soldier also told N12 that his unit had told him that he can return if he's vaccinated. So there's so much pressure on Israelis, unbelievable pressure.
When you speak about that, I read also, I listened to yesterday a lady who was speaking for her daughter who is in the army, who is under a lot of pressure because she thought about the vaccine. She does not want to be vaccinated. And now they are making her doing more work. They have to, it's like all the people, there is a segregation. and they are pushing the people to be vaccinated, and there was few who didn't want the vaccine, but now who've been vaccinated, but her, she still doesn't want to be. And there is so much pressure on her and on all the people who don't want to be vaccinated, and this is in the army.
Now, Israel's emergency service, the United Hatzalah, has fired, made redundant volunteer workers who were concerned about the vaccine. Nearly 300 volunteers who have chosen not to receive the experimental so-called vaccine, as we've mentioned before, have been laid off in a drastic move by the organisation. The move follows the organisation's promise made by its president and founder Eli Beer last month. Beer issued a statement on Thursday when the decision was put into effect, saying, "It causes me great pain to say goodbye to some of our volunteers who for personal reasons have chosen not to receive this experimental vaccine. They should now be departing our organisation. Should any of these volunteers change their mind and elect to receive the vaccine, we will welcome them back with open arms." Meanwhile, an international court in The Hague accepted Tel Aviv lawyers' complaint against the Israeli government, stating that the country's administration of the coronavirus vaccine and policies to encourage vaccination are in violation of the Nuremberg Code. And she Emet People of Truth, a group who are very concerned about this coronavirus experimental vaccination, filed a suit against the Israeli government with the International Criminal Court, the ICC, arguing that Israel's administration of the coronavirus vaccine and policies to encourage vaccination are considered crimes against humanity. Listen to that. According to the Nuremberg Code, it is our intention to present to you and detail how in the state of Israel this year, the government of Israel, with its ministers and its Knesset members, heads of cities and additional senior factors, violate the Nuremberg Code in an unlawful manner, blatant and extreme, and to our regret, not only a single aspect but too many. The group wrote in the suit filed by Tel Aviv-based A. Shkavolsky and Co. law office. A decision by the court is now awaited. Well, we've also got there's a lot. Some people have said, well, what's happening with the legal system about this? Are there cases coming up before the courts? Well, there are. And in an extremely unjust precedent, an Israeli court unfairly ruled just this Sunday, as we've come into the studio, ruled that an unvaccinated school worker can be barred from work without a salary. The ruling came in the case of a teaching assistant at a school in the town of Zer Yigal in central Israel, who appealed against the local council's decision to demand that all education staff members either get vaccinated or take regular coronavirus tests as a condition for coming into work. Now, the thing you need to understand is that it's not always easy to get a test. It's expensive, and they're not always.
And it takes time.
And it takes your time, and it's not always freely available, and it's maybe not very close to where you're working. It may be extremely inconvenient.
Not very pleasant either.
Right. In the draconian ruling, the Labour Court decided that the teaching assistant Sigal Avishai could not return to work and will unbelievably not continue to receive salary. Sadly, this case, Natalie, in other words, once they start deciding in favour of this extreme experimental vaccination program, the courts, then there's nowhere to turn. Because before you could go, see a lawyer, or you can take it to court. But if the courts start ruling against you, you have nowhere to turn.
Now, so this was like a court in Tel Aviv, so they can still appeal in the High Court, but
Supreme Court. Supreme Court.
Supreme Court, but again, is like, as you say, is the first. So. And I was listening again to somebody who knows a bit about how it works, and she said, well, I don't know for how long we are going to be able to believe and trust the tribunal.
Now, as well as the teaching assistant, and we mentioned about the army, we mentioned about schools. Now, Israeli companies, Bezek International, that's the big internet company in Israel. There are other internet companies, but Bezek International are in charge of running the internet system of the country. Yes, who are the biggest satellite company. They are in charge of putting the dish on your roof so you can receive TV channels, Pelephone, who are the biggest mobile phone company, have banned unvaccinated workers without pay after Passover. Report says that the firms have told their employees that they cannot come into work after Passover if they haven't been received this experimental vaccine. They'll be sent home without pay unless they get vaccinated or regularly present a negative coronavirus test. The firms told their employees that they will only be allowed in the office with a green pass. We mentioned this before, this green pass, that you cannot come into work, you cannot do things in the army, you cannot attend events. Now, the shocking thing about...
You cannot go to restaurants.
Right. Now, the shocking thing about all of this is the scripture, some of you may know it and some of you may have heard of it, from Revelation 13:17. And in Revelation 13 it says, and that no one will be able to buy or sell except, how can they buy or sell? They have the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. And you know what, Natalie, I was doing a bit of research into this, that some people have talked about this, and it says that people will be tricked into accepting the mark. Everyone will be required, it's not whether you want to or not, required and to display the mark in order to purchase anything from groceries to a car. No one will be able to go to a restaurant or buy things from the mall without possessing the mark of the beast. Now this does sound very similar to what's happening at the moment in Israel. It's very, very shocking. Without the mark, a person's life will be all but cut off from modern society. He will not be able to buy food or gain medical attention or buy or sell everything. Now, at the moment, we're not at the state yet where we cannot buy food. So that's, some people, I've heard rumours about that, but it's not true. We can buy food, but the thing's changing fast. And we've just had an election and things can completely change.
This is interesting because when there was a lot of pressure for the people to have the vaccine, suddenly the election arrived. So it's like we could really feel like the thumb taking off to give us a bit of breathing place here in Israel. And suddenly, and now the election just happened, we are enter into Passover. So we know that nothing is going to really happen right now because everybody's on holidays and, it's like that. But we are going to see something happening again, more pushing, more pressure after Passover. And we will keep you in touch with what's happening here.
Yeah, and let us know what's happening
in
where you are.
We
really appreciate.
We have Wolfgang.
Hi, Wolfgang. We really appreciate you contacting us. So please let us know what's happening in your country. If you're watching this at a later date on another channel, then you can email us at info@israelfirst.org. Now, as I was saying, the companies are saying that you have to have a green pass, this green passport. It's an app on your telephone. And unless you have it, you can't get access either for work after Passover. So even like Natalie was saying, there might have been some gap with the restrictions because of the election.
It, isn't it?
Right.
We could feel like the pressure was.
But as soon as Passover's over, it will stop, which we've just told you from the story about the electronics companies, the telephone companies. Now, the Israeli parliament, in the middle of all of this, there are other things going on. The Israeli parliament has enacted a law for electronic tagging at the main airport, like the type that prisoners are given. The bill maintains that travellers returning from abroad must be tagged. This is like something you would put on an animal or a dog, with a prisoner type electronic bracelet, or if they don't have that, they have to be sent to government quarantine facilities, those that are left, because they're starting to close a lot of the coronavirus hotels. A member of Knesset blasted the new law, saying the legislation tramples on the rights of the citizen and it doesn't meet the standards of a democratic and free state. That's a member of Israel's parliament talking about this new system, and this is just Wednesday. The Knesset, Natalie, on Wednesday approved in the second and third readings the bill that allows electronic surveillance bracelets to be fitted to like the type that prisoners have to those returning for anyone coming from abroad. Israel's Walla News reported, according to the, unless you have the green pass, we're coming back to that again. And by the way, at the airport, you're separated into those who have the green pass and those who don't. According to the bill, one entering Israel from abroad will be fitted an electronic monitoring bracelet. They're quite intrusive, these things are, and they're expensive. They're not free. You have to pay, I think it's 1,000 shekels, I'm not sure. Maybe you can look that up and let us know. You have to pay a deposit. Maybe it's not a deposit. Maybe you have to pay this as a payment. And to make sure that you don't leave the premises of isolation. If he or she refuses to wear the bracelet, he'll be sent to a coronavirus hotel.
Now, also what we want to say is very good. What you are saying is like we have also to look further, and what's happening here in Israel. If we are losing so much freedom, watch out that is going to happen also in your place, and you need also to fight for your freedom. And you know, Israel first, we call it because a lot of things happen here and will happen. And I hear some stories, and please send us your stories too, because it's very important. I heard some stories because I have some good friends in France, and some doctors, I received some reports, and it's going to happen over there the same. Now they say you have some freedom, but suddenly you are going to have a green pass for Europe. So it's going to be the same. It's not coming always the same way, but the goal is going to be the same.
Yeah, and it's like they say, this is coming to a town near you. You know, this Israel is like we said at the beginning of the program, is the place where they've started this experimental vaccine mass. It's not just a vaccine program, it's a mass vaccination program. In other words, the whole country.
Yes. By the way, today they were saying 50% of the population in Israel had the vaccine and the second shot.
So it's been great to be with you. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to email us, don't forget you can email us at info@israelfirst.org.